You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters, with thanks to Wexford Insurances. Wexford Insurances. More information at wexfordinsurance.com.
I'm joined now by Enda McDonnell, Regional Director of Enterprise Ireland. Good morning, Enda, and thanks for coming in this morning.
Thanks very much for having me, Karl.
Enda, you might start off by telling me a bit about your own background.
My background actually is economics. I'm an economist by training, and I've worked in Enterprise Ireland about 10 years at this stage, having various roles within the organisation. Working with companies directly with companies for about 3 years, but principally on our policy and planning side.
What's your remit in your current role?
Essentially, Karl, what my role is to be, I suppose it could be described as being Enterprise Ireland's representative within the region, but I think as importantly, it's been the region's representative within Enterprise Ireland. The way Enterprise Ireland works with companies is very much on a one-to-one basis. We have a whole range of development advisors that are spread throughout the country. And I think my primary role is to facilitate and help them when they work with companies wherever they are based in the region, including companies that are based in Wexford.
And how many client companies has Enterprise Ireland got in Wexford today?
We'd have in the region, I think probably in the region of about 160 companies. Obviously, that's only one segment of the entire enterprise base within Wexford. Our remit is to work with manufacturing and internationally traded services companies, but it's very important that those companies employ over 10 and also that they have the ambitions to grow on world markets.
You mentioned there that you support two company types, those involved in manufacturing and those involved in internationally traded services. What is an internationally traded service?
It's a great question. It's such a broad term that it kind of captures a fair bit. I think the way we traditionally thought about internationally traded services was very much about software, multimedia type companies. But it's so much broader than that. We would have, for example, a fund called the Going Global Fund, which has been in operation for about 2 or 3 years at this stage. And the idea behind the Going Global Fund has been to help companies that traditionally didn't think about exporting to start exporting. And it's essentially feasibility. We've got some fantastic companies in there. We've got, for example, the likes of some insurance companies who are now trying to tap into new markets. Obviously, I mentioned the software. Obviously, we've got internationally traded construction type services companies as well. So it's services companies, and a lot of them are the type of companies that the state would not necessarily have supported, but there's no limit on what an export is now. So an export is not necessarily something you just put in a box. So it can straddle a whole range of sectors, but they'd be the primary ones.
Over the last number of years, lots of job losses have taken place in the construction sector because Wexford had a very, very strong foothold in the construction sector over the last 10 years or that. What can Enterprise Ireland do to support, let's say, companies that are involved in construction today that would look to take advantage of UK opportunities?
I think from our own perspective, just to put in context, there's about 4,500 or thereabouts full and part-time people employed in Enterprise Ireland companies in Wexford. And in the southeast generally, it's about 20,000 or thereabouts. We've seen food employment stay relatively static. We've seen growth in other areas, but the big decline has been in the construction and engineering, the more traditional sectors. There's a couple of things I think that we're trying to offer companies now. We've reorientated the way we work with certain companies within Enterprise Ireland. We've established what we call our Potential Exporters Division. And the idea behind the Potential Exporters Division is to work with companies on a more of a group basis to build the capabilities before they start to export if they see that as a route to future growth. And I think from any company in Wexford, but particularly in terms of the construction and construction related, we're hoping to outreach to all those companies and say, look, a huge amount of expertise was built up in that particular sector throughout the boom. There's an opportunity now to maybe reorientate outwards.
What would you say to company bosses out there today that would fear the risks associated with exporting?
I think from our experience in working with companies, that there is a tendency to underestimate the cost of reorientating outwards, even to the UK. And it's cost in terms of money and it's cost in terms of time. And we provide a range of supports. As I mentioned, the Potential Exporters Division is very much Enterprise Ireland reaching out to companies throughout the country. And we will have an event, for example, which I think would be useful for Wexford companies in Waterford at the end of May. My hope is that we'll evolve a series of similar programmes and workshops in all the counties in the southeast, and obviously Wexford will be part of that, to bring those workshops directly to companies as opposed to wait for companies to come to Enterprise Ireland. So there's a whole range of activities that I think could be useful, but it's very much about building the capability and being in a position to exploit the opportunities but being ready to make that leap. But that requires knowledge and it requires development.
For companies that have failed in international markets, what's the number one reason for that in your experience?
I'd suspect there's probably two reasons. I suspect one of the key issues is probably around research. They made the move perhaps a little bit too soon. They didn't necessarily listen to what the customers wanted. Maybe they made an assumption about what their customers wanted. I think the potential exporters division will facilitate companies that want to ensure that they've got the research done. The research is underpinning the research and being ready to move is probably, and the lack of planning is probably the number one reason why companies fail. They also probably bite off more than they can chew. The way we would like to work with companies, the way we advise companies is that we're here on the basis of developing a long-term relationship. So it's very much a systematic approach, a staged approach with a business plan that looks 1 year into the future, 3 years and 5 years, and then trying to find the supports that support each element of the business plan at each stage where the company wants to go.
I know that the annual budget for Enterprise Ireland is 250 million. 100 million of that is for grant aid, which is put into employment grants, feasibility studies and everything else. What other soft supports are provided to businesses through your agency?
We have, for example, our development advisors who would work on a one-to-one basis with companies, and they would bring companies through the process of applying for funding, for example, or just it might be leveraging contacts. We have 32 overseas offices, including in new areas such as Brazil, in China, in Russia and in India, where we have people on the ground who are there to support companies. We'd also run a range of capability building programs. So, for example, we will be running and evolving a continuous program, what we call First Flight, which is essentially for companies at that very earliest stage of development in terms of their export agenda. We'd also have what we call our international selling program. This is for companies that might be slightly more advanced in terms of where they're at. There may be exporting Wexford companies there that might feel that they want to develop their selling capabilities. So all that is there as well. We also provide, for example, mentors. We have a network of about 300 mentors or thereabouts, where we can link up any company with mentors throughout the country. And again, that's just another option for companies in terms of to get advice from people who would have businesses themselves. We also have what we call R&D advocates. And R&D advocates are individuals that are not Enterprise Ireland staff members, but essentially what they are mentors, but they've done R&D in their own businesses, or they've managed an R&D business, a function within their own business.
There's one other service there, a business accelerator. Tell me a bit about that.
The business accelerator, I suppose, is to try and ensure that when companies are established companies, when they're trying to break into existing markets or new markets, that there's a support on the ground. It's essentially a consultancy function. We do have our overseas offices, which range and vary in terms of size. But essentially, the business accelerator partner would be someone who is of the market and understands intimately the particular sector and the needs of the sector within that particular market. So we would provide some funding, co-funded funding, and link up companies with the business accelerators. Again, it would be in the context though, and this is the way we work with a sustainable business plan. So any time that we would provide any support to a company, it's essentially to try and see how that supports other activities in the company. So, for example, if a company came to us looking for a business accelerator and saying that they wanted to export, we'd ask them questions as well around their R&D capability, about how lean and efficient they are, and a whole range of areas in terms of their management capabilities they're selling.
Two of the major criticisms of Enterprise Ireland over the last number of years from business people in County Wexford have been, number one, that we haven't had somebody on the ground based in County Wexford, and secondly, the lack of awareness about the full range of services provided by Enterprise Ireland. What alarms me a little is the fact that you're based in Cork. We had somebody that was based in Waterford for Enterprise Ireland in the past. That office now has been moved to Cork, which takes you even further away from us here in County Wexford. What are you going to do to ensure that Wexford won't be forgotten? Well,
first of all, just the Wexford office is still very much open. I think that's an important point. I will be based in Cork and have responsibility for Cork and the South East region. I think the nature of the job, though, means that you can't stay behind a desk. I think you have got to be continually out there meeting not only companies but also officials in terms of the local authorities and also representative bodies, and trying to find ways to leverage and work together. So it's not a locational based type of job. You need to be on the road. I need to be out there meeting companies. And I think the other criticism that might have been made of Enterprise Ireland is that we might have sat back and waited for companies to come to us. Now, companies can still do that, but my role is very much to evangelize the idea of exporting, to actually get to where the companies are based. And I suppose the other thing is to work with them in different ways. So we work with companies on a one-to-one basis. We've increased the capability program, so we're working with companies in workshops more in terms of group events. And I think for me, it's to try and link into the likes of Wexford Chambers, for example, and to show, because there are companies which will be listening to this that might be thinking, that are members of the Chambers and might not necessarily think that Enterprise Ireland has anything to offer them in terms of their stage of development. There's always something that we can work on. What
message would you like to give to any business owner out there today that's involved in manufacturing or internationally traded services?
I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, actually, because I think I'm not altogether sure that there are certainly nationally, but there mightn't be too many regionally based radio stations that have a specific business show, and I think that that's an important service. So it gives me the opportunity to talk, I suppose, about the type of services that we offer. Look, there's a lot of discussion about exports. There's a lot of discussion about foreign earnings. The type of companies that I would like to talk to are the type of companies that are thinking about exporting or have ambitions to grow. The second group or cohort that I'd like to address in Wexford is companies with business ideas. Companies that think they have something that's innovative, something that they'd like to grow and develop further. There's a whole range of supports there.
How can people get more information about Enterprise Ireland?
We have a pretty detailed website now that's been completely reorganised, and the way we've structured it is on the basis of, not on a sectoral basis, but on a stage of development. So you will see links there in terms of people that want to start their own business, or they're established companies, or there might be, for example, large companies. So I think the first protocol would be the website.
Thanks for taking the time to come in this morning. I know you are new to the role, and I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you every success with it.
You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters, with thanks to Wexford Insurances. Wexford Insurances, #1 for business insurance in County Wexford.